whom was it shared? Why was it not posted on a public platform and with an internal applicants only statement, as is common with job openings in schools? It's my understanding that this position was posted on our website and it was shared with the faculty in a staff meeting. We are open to internal candidates applying, and I don't know anything to the contrary of that. Sorry, this is hard to manage. I'm just trying to keep track. Just removing, sorry, this is from Graceland. Just removing access to consent and healthy relationship education, knowing Baxter has had sexual abusers in their school. So again, Graceland, I think this is a very important subject that we need to address, and understanding how the faculty can continue to educate the students is important. But again, this is, as we talked about with the health, this is a subject that we will address after negotiating with the union. Lynn writes, thank you for that explanation, Kelly. Glenn says, how is sex ed and health going to work during advisory? Again, we're going to table that for right now. Nora Ann says, Baxter has systematically ignored victims of sexual assault and harassment, and now you're taking away students' sexual wellness court resources. You see the issue? You are showing blatant disregard for student welfare. Nora, I'm very sorry to hear that. That is a very difficult thing to read. I think that we need to address that as a leadership team, with or without whatever happens to the school budget or how we close the budget gap. So obviously our students' health and wellness is important to us, and making sure that children and young adults, are safe from sexual assault and harassment is a very, very important thing to the school, to the board, to the administration. So I look forward to having some more conversations about that. Parent list. When did the board determine that positions of the dean of faculty, community outreach coordinator, and registrar would be added to the administration side of Baxter Academy? So this is again back to the conversation we had about CC and trying to figure out what the organization looks like in the future and building things into the budget before we were aware of this budget crisis. Nick writes, I hope you realize this education is important as well. You would know that if you listen to student voices. Okay, Nick, I thank you for that comment. I'm always open to student voices, and I'm pleased to see that some students wrote to us at the Baxter board at Baxter-Academy, .org. We do care. We read every email that comes in. I know that when we first set up that board email list and we said, this will be a way for people to inform us of things, but this isn't going to start being a policy forum. We've learned from it. We've learned that just receiving an email is probably not perceived as being responsive when we don't respond. Now we're trying to respond, and unfortunately people are frustrated that every individual email isn't individually responded to. We made the decision that we thought that addressing the whole community in a board meeting would be more effective. So we do care about what the students say, we care about what the teachers say, we care about what the parents say, we care about the community. Was there ever a job description for the registrar and the dean of faculty? So we're going to go back to this, and this is back to we need to figure out how the functioning administration is going to work in the new school year. I'm sorry, I feel like I scrolled down too far. Levi, you seem pretty sure when you got rid of SB. I'm not sure what that's referencing to, but again, we're tabling those conversations. Deb writes, so Rob, I don't know. Sky writes, how are you expecting Anue to teach every single student in the school? So Kelly, do you want to take this? I'm not quite sure.
Do you want to address it, or do you want to?
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. We decided that we're tabling the French and Spanish conversation. Sorry about that. What is the school you referenced in the email that is smaller than Baxter but has 27 administrators? There are multiple schools in which the ratio of admin to students exceeds Baxter's. It was an anecdotal comment. I would prefer not to say which school it is, but it's easily found out by looking at various schools in the Portland area. We tried to look at both public schools, which make the compare a little difficult because they manage a whole school system. We looked at some private schools, which are a little different because they charge tuition. We looked at other charter schools. So it's a really hard compare to figure out exactly how to compare a charter school like Baxter to any other school. Angie writes, that's the same question. It's about the ratio of admin to students. Super confused by this comment. Again, if the number of teachers change, the teacher-student ratio will increase. It's been tough for students to get classes. I do not understand how the cuts will help this. Well, I look forward to meeting with the union and finding other alternatives to funding or closing that funding gap. Why aren't you answering the questions regarding Kelly's salary? Answering all the questions of open the floor. I think I did. I said that my recollection is that Kelly makes $90,000 a year, and I think I addressed that when the first question came up. Adam, I don't know what that means. Why are you skipping questions? Gracelyn, I don't think I am skipping questions. All questions deserve answers. I don't think I have skipped any questions. I'm trying to read them all as I go down. Read the rest of Ross's question. Actually, Christian, could you help me out and find the Ross question that I perhaps skipped? And we'll continue.
It'd be great if people could reserve chat for questions. There is definitely a lot of toxic chat going on here. Someone even copied and pasted in directions to furniture assembly, which I didn't quite understand. So if we could try to keep this floor, and I think someone's been trying to do Google Doc, but they're not sharing it openly. It would be really great for everyone to see the questions after this meeting. We will also do our best if you could help us, Amos, with saving this chat at the conclusion, so we have a recorded transcript of the chat.
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you. From Amy Anderson, school salaries are public record. I agree with that, and I don't think that we have not disclosed the questions or answered the questions regarding salary. Number 6 from the from the parents. How did the administration count faculty and come up with 35 full-time equivalent positions? Who was on that list and how were they counted? Hold please. I know that this is another hard one to. There are multiple ways of counting employees, and for simplification, we put one group into the teaching bucket and the others into the administrative bucket. Many people will say that that's not necessarily the right way to do it, but that's how we did it. Teaching roles include teachers, guidance counselors, social workers, and ed techs. So the strategy is those are the people who are interfacing with students on a regular basis. Everyone else fell into the bucket of administration, even though some would say someone working in the front office or the facilities isn't really an administrator of the school. That's how we broke it up. I would like to clarify one thing that Kelly actually makes $100,000 a year, not 90.
Oh my God.
Give the students the floor to speak. I'm struggling to get through the 368 questions that we have. I don't think that we have the ability to let people speak. Rachel says, I hear you saying Heather DiPolito will not be replaced. What other admin positions are being eliminated or vacancies will not be filled? So, Kelly, you probably can answer this, or I can try to find the answer.
So, community outreach and partnerships was the big one. Another one was the registrar. We were trying to pull all of the tasks associated with that process away from the various places that they had landed in the school as the school grew very quickly. So those are two anticipated fills that we won't be able to go forward with. We had a receptionist that we've been trying to hire right before the school went to remote learning. So we had a lot of plans that were in process based on what we've been doing this year to analyze how we might redistribute tasks so that they make sense in our organizational structure, and so that they are no longer the patchwork that they've been as we grew very quickly from 125 students in the first year to over 400 this year. So a lot of the planning that went into this coming year and redistribution of tasks and restructuring of the administrative team, that planning was all going forward until May 4th when we found out that we were going backwards with funding. And so at that point, those plans got scrapped. So part of why you hear us struggling to describe what's changing is that we had positions that we were hiring for in the current year. We had positions that we were planning for in the coming year based on identified needs, and all of those plans and current actions got changed because of May 4th when we found out that we needed to readjust our budget. So I hope that answers.
Great. Renee writes about fundraising as a nonprofit board's responsibility. Agreed. We have work to do with that. Lonnie writes, thank you to everyone speaking about sexual harassment here. It takes a lot of courage, and it's especially hard in an environment like this where sex ed is being taken away from us students. Lonnie, we agree with you. Sex ed, educating people about sexual harassment, educating students on how to treat themselves and treat others is an important component of life and education, and we hope to resolve this potential problem.
Peter, just wanted to give you a forewarning. I'm seeing lots of questions about things in the budget that were considered and that have been cut. I know that was something that was in some previous budget presentations in the two meetings prior to this. There's also some assumptions, just reading between the lines, that questions like, why are we firing teachers first when that's actually not the case? That was the last thing. We tried to squeeze everything we could out of this budget before it came to personnel. So I'm just hoping you could give a little more clarity. That is a theme that I see a few times in some of the chat, just about Rightfully so. People don't want to see great people leave. No one does. And so if you can give a little bit more clarity, maybe even some specifics on all the other places that we tried to squeeze money out of an already thin budget before getting to personnel.
Very good. We did go through whatever line items where we could control spending, and we look back to what was actually being spent and how we can, reduce those numbers down as much as possible. We've tightened up within the school how expenditures are made. So, in a sense, in the past, it was more of allowing the various faculty to go out and purchase what they need. The invoices would just show up in our finance department, and we would pay them, and we would try to track at the budget. So what we've done is we've pulled that back, and people need to request what they need in a way of supplies in order to control the budget and reduce various areas. When I go through the budget, there aren't a lot of areas where we can actually make reductions. I mean, for example, we have no control over changing what our rent is, which is a huge piece of our budget. Our debt service, we have no control over that. That cannot be changed. Many of the costs to run the actual school, heat, light, power, internet services, those are things that we cannot cut. We, as a school, the city of Portland required us to have a student parking lot, which we are spending probably approximately $20,000 a year to have that parking lot for the students. And the students don't actually park in it, they park on the street. Our hopes were that we would collect fees from the students for parking in the lot. The lot is not being used, but we are still required under contract to have that parking lot. So these are a lot of things that are out there that we just do not have control over. The flip side is, how do we generate more revenue for the school? We as a board, we look at that. I know the parent association has been working hard, trying to raise money. But unfortunately, people tend to give to nonprofit organizations when you're involved in building a building or buying equipment, those type of things. And then you think about the history of Baxter, over the last 6 years, as we were building facilities and moving into our final facility, we did get a lot of contributions. We've raised over $2 million in the last 6 years. But a lot of that went into the infrastructure that Baxter now is. It is very difficult to raise money for programming. I would love for, and one of the other things, Baxter is really a new school. If you think about some of the other charters that are out there and some of the private schools who've been around for 30, 40, 50 years, they have alumni. And the alumni give every year. And if you go back and you look at some of these schools, alumni give significant amount of money to help close the budget gaps. Now, we're not there yet. We've only had a couple of graduating classes, and as the years go on, we hope we'll have those additional revenues. But right now, we don't. Our next biggest line item is personnel, and that was the last thing we looked at. We tried to squeeze whatever we can out of everything else.
And you said I type hard.
So, Christian, I hope that helps.
Excellent. Well, so two things. I want to just pause for 1 second. So I'm getting a text message that some people are falling off the meeting. No one is being pushed out of the meeting. So I don't know, Amos, if this is a stability issue with the number of users that we have. I know you had some
Yeah,
technical
that's definitely.
problems. I know Kelly had some technical problems, but there's nothing nefarious going on asking people to leave or kicking them out. So I would just encourage, if someone has been kicked out of the meeting, they should just click back on
Yeah, please,
the link and rejoin.
please rejoin. There's no one currently in the waiting room. Everyone's in.
And the second one, well, in the spirit of reading every question, because I'm not skipping questions deliberately, Levi says fire Kelly or fire Pryor. Thank you for your suggestion, Levi. Back to the parents list. Was there ever a job description created for the registrar? I think I asked this question already. The job description for the registrar and the dean of faculty roles. Were these job descriptions reviewed to determine true necessity or check for overlap with existing positions? Yes, they were created, and the tasks were, assessed. Who was doing the tasks that were part of those positions? Currently, those are being done by other administrators who are picking up the slack and doing things to keep the lights on. So the purpose of assessing potentially other positions, the registrar, for example, was to streamline that process. But that's been eliminated. Gabriella writes, the last I heard, health would be incorporated into advisory. Again, tabling that. Adam says, we have seen none of these things in our school. I apologize. I'm not sure what Adam is referring to. Anybody has context of that? Let me know. This is really hard. Sorry, I scrolled and now I lost my place. Hold, please. Okay. There we go. The school has 32 teachers / counselors. This is from Julia. 32 teachers and counselors this year. Why is it that 4 teachers receive termination notice if we have 31 teachers in next year's budget? If you have defined teachers differently, please explain. I think I explained that. It included education, ed techs, teachers, guidance counselors, and there was one more, social workers. If you're not sure, I'm sure Kelly knows her salary and can share. That was from Maria. Yes, I clarified that. Thank you, Maria. Casey writes, it's pretty clear that the students and alum don't think that Kelly is keeping the mission of Baxter. How can students and alum hold her accountable? Well, I think that the Charter Commission is our ultimate accountability agent. We answer to them on whether we are meeting the charter. We also do want to consider, and we have considered feedback from the students. I think we've talked a lot about how can we make Baxter better, and I think that utilizing things like and I'm sorry, I'm going to get the name wrong, but not advisories, but the group that of representatives from each class. We've offered to the community that board meetings, if you want to get on the agenda of a board meeting, there's a process for it. There's a great opportunity for teachers and students to get onto the agenda, give a presentation, talk about what's going on. We would welcome your input. Amy Anderson, why is Kelly responsible for day-to-day activities when she is notorious for never being on the school floor when school is in session? The person in charge of day-to-day operations should leave their office. My child has been at Baxter for 2 years and has never seen Kelly in the school. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. Kelly's responsibilities are
Wait, is Kelly in
more
school?
outward facing as the outward facing part of the school in terms of compliance and budgeting and finance, and is reliant on the head of school or the interim head of school to be facing inward. So it's not a surprise to me. Although I will say, I'm trying to be transparent and appreciative of everybody's comments, but I'm starting to think that maybe in order to get to the 468 new messages, I am going to start to read them and to myself. And if we've already addressed them, I'm going to stop asking the questions. Okay, the next one was Kelly about fundraising outside of state and local funding. This was the same conversation that we've had. Thank you, Levi, for your comments. Thank you, Alex, for your comments. I don't know what Adams. W. Fard says most businesses do not have a CFO to handle day to day. A CFO handles the budget. An accounting manager would be much cheaper and more in line with the job marketplace for duties. So, how is the CFO expense justified? How much does the CFO earn this year? I don't know that number off the top of my head. I would say that a CFO for Baxter is not a comparable CFO position for a large corporation. It's a title, and our CFO does a great job to manage a wide range of things. We don't have the luxury of having a CFO who only handles the budget, and then an accounting person who handles the day-to-day finances. And so that's why we are, I think, lucky to have the person that we have in that position.
If I may jump in here, please.
Thank you.
First of all, the CFO that we have has a tremendous amount of experience. If she were to take that same position in the public sector, her salary would probably be 50% higher. And one of the big problems that you'll see amongst a lot of nonprofits and charter schools is they don't hire the proper expertise they need in the accounting office, which leads to their demise. We at Baxter, we're aware of what we need to keep the school viable and also to move it forward. And that's why we have such a highly qualified person in that position. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Next question is regarding French. Next question is Adam's question about salary. Again, same thing. I think we're getting a deal on this. The amount of work. What is the average teacher salary? That's all public information as well, I think. So I think we could provide that. Switching. Please provide job descriptions for administrators, including the unfilled positions. I believe that those are all posted, but I will defer to Kelly or part of the team. Kelly, you there?
Job descriptions?
Yeah.
Yes, we have them. I don't believe they're posted, but we do have job descriptions for each of the existing positions.
Thank you. Left due to low Graceland says, especially when teachers have left due to low salaries. Okay. Sheila, has there been considerations to pay cuts? Yes, we've talked about pay freezes, and that's the next item on the conversation is pay cuts. Lonnie writes, why do some teachers at our school have to take up extra jobs to be able to keep their positions and provide us with education? Christian, maybe you could take this one for me.
the salaries that we offer are commensurate or better, and are the best that we can hire, that we can provide. We would love to offer more. We would love to hire more. We're not making decisions based on any single individual, but to repeat, but based on positions that are required and necessary and needed and loved for our school. I don't know. I think that question is more of a rhetorical question to begin with.
Alex Wright, where did that $2 million go? Oh, the $2 million in funds that were raised. Peter or Kelly can speak better to that. Was it used for this?
Yes. Good part of the money went to building the infrastructure for Baxter over the last 6 years. As you're aware, we started out. We had one building. We added a second building as we were growing, and then from there we moved into our final location. Also, a good part of that money was used in the early years when the school did not have enough money originally to run operations. There's a break-even point for a school. So Baxter's break-even point is 400 students. So when we were below 400 students, in order to provide the education we did in those early years, we had to come up with additional funding to kind of close the gap until we got to our magic number of 400. So that's where most of that money went. It was really just to, get us to where we are. So hopefully that answers your question.
All right, Ross has some harsh criticisms that I'm not afraid to read out about myself. So, as executive director, chair of the board, and the board, it's your responsibility to make decisions with logic and care. Regardless of your interests, you need to re-examine your actions against your values. Are you interested in producing smart students or helping students become good people? Taking responsibility is not a comfortable thing, but you need to sit with it, learn from it, and move on. So I'm just going to pause for 1 second and address that first paragraph. So yes, we are interested in producing both smart and well-rounded students who are good people. I don't think that they are one or the other. I think that students have the ability to be both. Taking responsibility is not a comfortable thing. No, I'm not quite sure what that means because I think if anything, we're trying to take responsibility for the actions that we need to do. We have a budget that needs to be met, and that's the responsibility that we have. So we recognize the uncomfortableness that comes with this. We've been trying to have this community conversation for weeks, and we are happy. I mean, happy might be an overstatement, but we are, happy that people are engaged. Don't get me wrong. Don't take this the wrong way. We are happy about that. We've been trying to solve this as a community. It's like we've been screaming, there's a problem coming, and no one responded. And now we've had to take some action, and now people are responding, and good. We're happy with that. We're sitting with it, as you like to say, and we are happy to be working together. This video call has over 150 folks who care. You should be happy with this community showing the heck up. I am. From experience of being a college student whose president, dean of students, board chair, and other senior admin were petitioned out, had an over 70-day sit-in the president's office, multiple student protests, and faculty leaving out of disgust with the senior leadership's behavior. Yep, that happens. I'm not quite sure how to respond to that. We are doing everything that we think is in the best interest of the school. And again, we're welcoming people's assistance with meeting the challenge that we have. As I said before, we're not acting. This wasn't a let's cause chaos at Baxter and reduce headcount. We are reacting to the situation that's presented to us, which is the budget cut. So I could see you all are nervous. Taking responsibility should make you nervous because you should care about doing it right. Well, I would challenge you, Ross, that managing a call with 150 people and over 500 messages coming at you is a little bit out of my daily normal activities. So I hope I don't appear nervous. I'm not nervous. I'm just trying to do a good job for everybody and make sure everybody's voices are heard. People before money. We should only be talking about people. That's from Amy Anderson. Quite sure what the question is. Juniper says, I'd like to repeat the request to give students and alumni a chance to verbally express their experiences with teachers being terminated. I'm going to table that, Juniper, because we are on hold. Megan's. All right. Well, this is actually not a Kelly bashing question, so I am going to read it. Megan writes, Kelly has also been part of Baxter from the beginning days at Baxter. She understands the culture of our school, has the experience as both a parent of 2 students and in her role. Thank you, Megan, for that acknowledgement.
Wait a second. Do Kelly students go to Baxter?
Sky, if you want 3 minutes per person, take less time to answer questions so you can actually answer questions. I should take less time to answer questions so I can actually answer questions. I'm not sure about that. Sky, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I didn't really expect 150 people, and I certainly didn't expect a list of 25 questions from the parents and then another 500 questions. So I'm doing the best I can. Going back to the parents' questions. Who is providing performance reviews for all administrators? So the board issues a review of the executive director's performance, and then the executive director writes the performance reviews of her direct reports, like the head of school. We also look forward to having a head of school who will oversee the performance review process of our faculty. Stop filling the space so we can run out of time. Elliot, I am not trying to run out of time. I am 36 minutes over and have no intention of stopping in the next few minutes, so I'm trying to get through the list. Margie, Graceland, thank you for sharing. It's a hard thing to say and a hard thing for the community to have to hold. I'm glad we can help you hold it, and I hope you feel and know you are supported. I agree with that comment. Thank you, Margie. I think Sky's comment is, I'm not sure. The largest particle physics lab is in Switzerland, where the majority of employees speak French. Thank you for that observation, Sky. Laura's question is about language, so I'm going to table that. Angie Taylor writes, to Christian's point about compliance reporting, I remember spending a significant amount of my time working on that report. I also remember that we hired someone to write the report. Are we no longer paying that contact? $2 million. Where did that money come from? Is that public? I feel that there was a team who made that work happen. I wonder if the board could be more transparent about the financial health of the school. Okay, so I'll speak to a couple things and then I'm going to defer to my colleagues on the board. I think that the board is very transparent. Every month we review the financial statements in a public forum. We also transparently discussed the budget as it stands going into next year, as well as the financial implications of COVID-19 and the budget gap. We walked through every different scenario that we thought was possible to close that gap. And if people attend the board meetings, they will witness those disclosures. That to me is transparency. As far as about writing the compliance reporting, I'm going to have to defer to Kelly on that.
So there are pieces of the compliance reporting that rest with the instructional leaders. particularly around assessment. So they have the expertise to look at the test scores, break them out into categories required by the charter summary report, and analyze them for us to both report on them and to use them internally to improve instruction for students. So my job is to coordinate all of the internal pieces and pull them into the reporting that we have to do. And this is done for the Charter Commission, for the state of Maine, for the lenders, and for the federal government. So there are layers of this reporting that are ongoing throughout the year. And yes, the instructional leaders do participate in pieces where their expertise pertains.
Great, thank you, Kelly. Kelly writes, this is Kelly Killahor, I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. When we first started, our executive director, Carl Stacio, was part-time. There has been a lot of discussion of going back to how we started. Why can't we make the executive director position part-time again to help save the budget? I think the reason we moved from a part-time to full-time position was that a lot of the work that we deemed and that the Charter Commission deemed needing to be done wasn't being done. Also, a lot of the work that the executive director position requires was actually being done by the board chair. So that is a big factor on why we went from part-time to full-time. The board chair really shouldn't be in the weeds of running the school, and so that's why we have a full-time executive director. Sorry, switching back to the the parent list. So all of the, if I can just quickly scroll through, all of the final 10 questions from the parents list of questions refer to program cuts. So again, I'm going to defer those questions until after we've met with the union and have determined what or how we are going to bridge the budget gap. And by the way, thank you very much for either suggesting or being patient with me as I tried to figure out how to handle both the chat list and the questions. I wasn't quite sure how to deal with that, but I think that we found a good middle ground by having a little bit of both and alternating between the two. So sorry it took me a second to figure that one out, but I think that worked well. Stop filibustering. Nobody doubts you care, but are you caring right? I'm not sure, Ross. I'm not filibustering. That's a complete different action. Kate, what percentage of students actually take Mandarin compared to French and Spanish? I know that this past fall, we had one class of French, one class of Spanish, and 2 classes of Mandarin. That's how I recall the update.
That's not true. What were you going to say? What's filibustering?
So Deidre writes, I think this is an interesting one. Teacher terminations should be based on seniority with stripes of educational background, institutional knowledge, and performance reviews. Reassign teachers based on these and other factors. Using position and program as criteria is harming those who have served you well. That may end up being a suggestion. We just need to make sure that we have the right people in the right spots to make sure that we can handle the classes that we need to offer. So Lisa Bachman writes, to each board member, please share your perspective of how all Baxter students are impacted and how you feel they will be supported with the amount of changes that they've experienced, none of which any of us have experienced as teenagers. Mr. Couts, with your, sorry, I'm not sure that got cut off. So would the board members like to address
Sure.
thoughts on Thorn? Yes.
I'm listening and reading everything in the chat, and as we said, reading all the emails. I guess I'd like to focus my comments on the issue that we're hearing, which is overcoming the challenge that all of us has of a community to solve this challenge in funding. And I'll just reinstate my feeling, which is we did reach out to the union. We did have 2 board meetings. There were people there that came and spoke and asked questions as we reviewed all of our choices and when we made our final decision. I think it's great that people are here also. I appreciate everyone's time and contributing. And as Patty said, we're going to meet as a board to talk about the idea of a pause and reevaluating and coming back and having a larger dialogue. So for me, this is all good to continue to engage and have these discussions.
Thank you, Thorn. Christian?
First of all, for all the students in the audience, I can't imagine what it's been like, kind of losing the physical contact with your community over this past semester. I mean, it's like definitely been an extreme upheaval, and seniors especially. My heart goes out to you. At the same time, like with everything that's going on and tough choices that the board has and may have to make, that can definitely inspire some anger. I see some anger in the chat, and my personal belief is if you're not angry, you're not paying attention. It goes for a lot of things going on in the world these days, and so I do encourage you to funnel the feelings that you're having into ways that will make your community, your school better, etc. We are definitely listening and taking to heart what we're seeing here. And reading and hearing from you all via email, via chat, and all the other ways that you all have contacted us. And so I just want to say that, this is difficult for everyone around, but I definitely appreciate the engagement that we're seeing from the entire community. And I can only speak for myself when I bring myself to Baxter work. I'm just trying to do the very best thing I can to make the school as good as it can be under the circumstances in which we sit.
Ruth, do you want to address the question about your perspective on the Baxter students?
Change is tough. It's tough for all of us. And when we're sitting in the boardroom and we're trying to make the best choices that we can for everyone at the school, it's because we want the best for everyone at the school. If I had $1 million that I could just fix this with, I would give it in a heartbeat. I know everyone on the board feels exactly the same way. We're doing the best we can. We want all of our students to thrive. We want all of our students to feel safe. It's our top priority. It always will be and always has been.
Thank you, Ruth. Peter?
Well, I have 4 children. They were all at home now, and 3 of them were not. And my youngest is a Baxter student. And my heart breaks every night when I sit around and I see the pain that they are all in, and I know the pain that you are all in. I hear them on their phones chatting with their friends. I see the stuff that they post. We as a board are trying our best to make the best of the situation as possible. Like Ruth said, if we had the ability to make the budget whole, all of us would probably do it in a heartbeat. I've been involved with the school since the beginning, and we have been through a lot of tough times in the last 7 years. And I know, knowing the teachers, knowing the students that have come out of the school and the students that are here, we will survive this. It's going to be a hard lesson for us all to really take in. But hopefully it will make us better and stronger as a community. We cannot turn on ourselves. We need to be strong.
Thank you, Peter. And Nick?
My wife's a teacher. I'm a nonprofit executive director, and we're both looking at, the coming year as being a very difficult one for our organizations as well. I think everybody's facing this, and I think, as usual, Baxter is out in front of this. I've been involved since the very beginning in some way or another, and I've watched it grow, and it's so painful to watch it possibly shrink next year after all the progress. But it's the hard reality of $448,000 of a cut, and that's just a 10% cut. Another 5% would be another $200 and some $1,000. That's, you can't cut that just out of small little bits around the edges. And we hope that these are temporary cuts. We hope that this pandemic is temporary. I mean, it fucking sucks.
Don't make me mute you.
Sorry.
Thank you. And I think that, Lisa, were you asking for Bob Kautz to also address that question? Because I'm sure Bob has an interesting perspective serving on the Charter Commission. Bob, you want to come off mute?
Not really, but what was the question again? I've listened to all the answers and been away from the question now.
Yeah, the question was, can you please share your perspective of how all Baxter students are impacted and how you feel they will be supported with the amount of changes that they've experienced?
Well, I believe that Baxter is going to support the students to the best of their ability, regardless of what the size of the budget is, and it's something that Baxter has done from the very beginning when you had the school couldn't even open on the first days because it wasn't ready yet, and you went for a couple of days out of Cape Elizabeth into the park and had some great experiences and bonding and bringing people together. And I think that Baxter has tried to continue that right along. I do think the kids here, as the students, any of the schools, public or charter, coming back to school at a time that it is very difficult to explain what is going on in this world. And things have changed for them incredibly. They've been changed for adults also, but adults have been through experiences like this many times in the past, not as severe as this or as unique as this. So I can only go back on nearly 80 years of experience and say, I've been through things like this, but I've never been through this. And I'm still scratching my head, and you can see I've been doing it a lot because I'm bald. But I'm scratching my head trying to figure it all out right now between a virus and marches in the streets and destruction of private property and disrespect for individuals and the growing idea that you can say anything about anybody and that's good. I haven't figured that out yet. And I think that all of us, whether we're students or adults, we're all learning. And I hope that from all of this, good learning will occur and progress will occur, and people will know that if you work together, it's far better than working separate.
Thank you very much, Bob. That's great perspective. And thank you very much for that question. I think that was great to hear. Pam asks a question about, what about the funds available from the DOE? Not talking about PPP, talking about education funding for public schools. I'm going to have to defer this to either Peter or Bob.
Bob, if there's more money out there for us, please send it our way.
I wish there were, but we don't know of it being there.
We definitely have had a lot of ideas around fundraising. I think one of the things that we wanted to do probably for people who, maybe use the email as a way of their willingness to help all of us as a community to approach that. So I think that's trying to take a positive thing out of some of the energy expressed today.
Thank you, Thorne. Tanya's message, I think, is a private one. Maybe the government, this is from Alex, maybe the government should distribute more of their funding towards schools. Much to think about. Yes, we agree with you, Alex, on this one, and I think that there are people in various organizations representing charter schools trying to get more funding for us, but at this point, we only have what we can deal with. Pat, this is from Clara. Please do address the questions submitted now. They were requested. I did. So, oh, sorry. This probably came in before I started going back and forth. So, thank you, Clara. This is about comprehensive health. So we're going to table this. How can you just health documents? We need documentation that Baxter does not qualify for ESSER or ESSER funding. Please share on the screen. So I have a document from our attorney or from an attorney. I don't know where. I've got too many documents open. I can share it as part of the PowerPoint that we send out. Okay. Fundraising, education, students French. I'm not sure what the Google Doc references. Okay, Margie writes, it is challenging for parents to support fundraising for the school when they don't have confidence in the board and the leadership. Where are the board and executive directors' plans to change how they have been working to date? Current structure and form isn't inspiring much confidence. I'm very sorry to hear that you feel that way, Margie. I've received a lot of feedback since becoming the board chair, and I've taken that feedback, I hope, with an open mind. A lot of conversations came up about transparency, and I think that the board has been trying to be more transparent. It wasn't that we were trying to not be transparent, it was we were a new board trying to figure out the right ways to manage the work. I don't think that I lost my train of thought. Do you have a plan that will help parents, teachers, and students feel more confidence in you? Well, we're trying to be open and transparent here. We're trying to listen to people's comments. And we are trying to make sure that we're always focused on the thing that is the thing. And the thing is the budget gap. And so those are the responsibilities of the board, is to provide that fiscal responsibility and oversight. And we take our roles very seriously. I'm not sure how to inspire more confidence, although I would say I would invite you to join the board meetings every month. It's the second Tuesday of every month. And, I think we kind of go in phases where we have participation. We have a lot of people. We've never had 150 people at a meeting, but I think that's great. But we've also had a ton of board meetings with no one in attendance besides us. And so I just would think that a way to build relationships and trust is for folks to join the meetings, ask good questions, and be part of the solution.
Salt, pepper, salt, pepper, salt, pepper. Are you still harassing them with questions?
Did we look at every other possibility before the layoffs? Yes, we did. We went through it twice. Happy to go through it again in another meeting. But hopefully we can, by working with the union, try to find another solution. What options did we consider? So we considered the reduction in as many of our expenses as possible.
I think he's getting
And I think Peter actually went through this, so I think in effort to keep going with the messages, I'll keep going. We could do it if we cut Kelly's salary again. When a letter is sent to the board email, do all members read it? Yes. The issue is that you don't think there is any blame to be had. I'm not quite sure what you mean by that, Elliot. You know, I think it's unfortunate the way things ended up. And I think that we are happy to see the feedback that we've received and that we're looking forward to the next phase of this. Again, this is us just reacting to the budget situation, and I have a hard time feeling that there's any blame to go around. We have a situation, we have a pandemic, and we're just dealing with the impact of that. And as we've said, all of the board members care phenomenally about the school, the students, the perception, people's feelings. I mean, there's a lot to think about, and we try to balance it all. But we have to do it in an organized fashion that is not that's not always easy. Okay, I've made it down to the basic pieces of furniture. Keep moving. Yeah, Deidre writes, suggest exploring a partnership with a professional fundraising team, i.e. Demont Associates, who can facilitate large donor gifts. I think that's something we should consider. I'm happy to look,
It's amazing you
you know,
don't
hear
consider
more
it
about
already.
that. So if you have more information and want to share it with us, let's get you on the board agenda. Significant other relief options available and becoming available related to the pandemic. There are a variety of direct and indirect federal dollars available. I hope that we've addressed this. Can you let us know specifically what you've pursued in the last couple of weeks? For example, I'm not that confident that you're currently exploring all of these options. We are exploring all of the options that we're aware of. We are reaching out to other boards and other charter schools to find out what they've done. We've reached out to the Charter Commission for their advice, and we have a certified public accountant who is our treasurer. So we're trying to find the funds as best we can. I would put it back to you and say, if you know of something that we should be accessing, let us know. Will admin also take a 6% cut in pay? I think that's on the table for conversation. So there are many, many students and parent questions in this chat. I know there's another 731 and growing questions. It's 8:03, and I don't think that I'm going to make it through all of the questions. We can talk about as we exit the meeting. One of the suggestions that I'd like to make is we can get a copy of this transcript from Amos. We can take the time to bucketize them, if that's a word, into different themes and try to address the questions. Addressing them one by one, I think, is really hard. The question about norms, about time limits are no longer relevant or being followed. Yeah, this meeting I think is special. It's a special meeting. It was called a special board meeting, and I think that it's really difficult to figure out how to have 150 people be able to speak for 3 minutes each and still have this meeting within a manageable amount of time. So my recommendation is that when we decide that we're going to stop the meeting, that's what we'll do. And Amos, I'm assuming that you can help us with that technology of exporting this list of questions to Excel or something so that we can kind of organize it.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, I can put it in a way that's organized for you guys.
Excellent. Okay.
Yes.
Now we're getting into another person. What is Anna Gervais' salary? I believe that's still public information as well. Baxter functioned without her for the first years of its existence and had no issues. If the enrollment process and graduation were reassigned, is her role essential to Baxter Academy? Kelly, you can probably speak to all of the things that Anna is doing on behalf of the students and the faculty better than I can.
Anna Gervais holds up more than half the sky at Baxter Academy. She is a diligent hard worker. She works around the clock, around the weekend. She handles the enrollment process. She handles student services, a lot of support around assessment. She's taken on so much of the data management pieces that have not been that we haven't had the capacity to handle anywhere else. She works throughout the summer to try to manage the student records requests, transfers back and forth from the school, something that is handled by whole departments in other school districts. Anna Gervais earns every penny that she makes at Baxter Academy, and she's essential.
Thank you, Kelly. I think at this point, there's a lot of comments that are based in perhaps a not complete understanding about what it takes to run a charter school. And I think things are getting a little personal, which is something that we've been trying to not have happen. I know that that's very difficult. It's very difficult when we're talking about people's jobs, people's livelihoods. And it was not an easy conversation, any of this. But we welcome the feedback. It's been over 2 hours, almost 3 hours, and I'm gonna say that we're gonna conclude tonight's meeting. Excuse me, correct me. We're going to go into executive session because we still need to do that. Hold please while I get the what it's called, the reference. So we're going to go into executive session for the purpose of discussing the rights and duties of the board pursuant to section 504 SE of the Maine revised statutes. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, we're going to do two things. One, Amos is going to help us download all of these questions. We will put them into buckets and categories, and we will try to send out responses to those questions. Actually, three things. Number two is I will get this PowerPoint over to Kelly and company tomorrow. and I will add in the information around why the PPE is not available to Baxter, as I said I would. And then number 3 is we will leave this video conference open. The board will go to a separate video conference link to have our executive session, and then we will come back to this video conference to conclude the meeting. I hope if I didn't do that right, our attorney will have texted me. So I want to thank you all for participating. It means a lot to me and to members of the board. We couldn't run this school without everyone involved: teachers, students, faculty, administration, people in the front office, the board, our attorneys, our accountants. It takes a lot of people to run a school for 415 students from over 60 different towns. We're doing the best we can. This is a terrible pandemic that we're in. Hopefully, we will start to come out of this both physically and in terms of health concerns, but also in terms of the economic concerns that this is causing. I appreciate everyone's time, and I will talk to you all later.
Patty.
And to the board members, yes, I will send out a link because we can't have 2 Zoom
Right.
meetings or Google meetings. So I will send board members a separate link to the video conference for the executive session.
Look at Rosie. She has melted into like a mold.
She's so cute.
So it's done.
It's over?
Yeah, I think. Wow. Wasn't sure it was gonna end tonight. I thought it'd go all night.